On February 24, 2022, the world woke up to a turning point in modern history. Explosions were reported across Ukraine as Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion. Missiles struck major cities, and troops advanced from multiple directions, creating a rapid and overwhelming shock. What was expected by many to be a short and decisive operation quickly turned into something far more complex and long-lasting. At first glance, it may seem like this conflict began in 2022, but its roots go much deeper. To truly understand what is happening, you have to go back centuries, to a time when the foundations of Eastern Europe were first being formed. More than 1,000 years ago, a powerful state emerged around the city of Kiev, known as Kievan Rus. It became a major center of trade, culture, and political life, connecting regions from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. In 988, its rulers adopted Orthodox Christianity, shaping the identity of the region for generations to come. Today, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus all trace their origins back to this early civilization, but they interpret that shared history in very different ways. Over time, historical events pulled these lands in separate directions. The Mongol invasions in the 13th century shattered the unity of the region, leading to centuries of division. What is now Ukraine came under the influence of Lithuania and Poland, while Moscow rose to power in the northeast, eventually becoming the center of a growing Russian state. These different paths created distinct political systems, cultures, and identities. By the 18th century, much of Ukraine had been absorbed into the Russian Empire. Efforts were made to integrate it fully, often at the expense of local language and identity. This continued under the Soviet Union, where control remained centralized. One of the darkest moments came in the early 1930s, when a devastating famine caused millions of deaths in Ukraine, leaving a deep and lasting scar. In 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union brought a dramatic shift. Ukraine became an independent country, stepping onto the global stage with its own sovereignty. At that moment, it also inherited a vast nuclear arsenal, making it one of the most heavily armed nations in the world. A few years later, Ukraine agreed to give up these weapons in exchange for assurances that its borders and independence would be respected. As the years passed, tensions began to grow. NATO expanded eastward, bringing several former Soviet-aligned countries into the alliance. For Western nations, this was seen as a natural extension of security and cooperation. For Russia, it was viewed as a strategic threat moving closer to its borders. This disagreement remained unresolved and continued to build over time. In 2008, Ukraine was offered a potential path toward joining NATO, a move that increased concerns in Moscow. Although membership did not happen immediately, the possibility alone added to the tension between the two sides. By 2013, internal divisions within Ukraine reached a breaking point. The government decided to step away from closer ties with the European Union, triggering widespread protests. What began as a political disagreement quickly turned into a broader movement demanding change, transparency, and a different future. The protests grew larger and more intense, eventually leading to a shift in leadership. Soon after, events escalated rapidly. Crimea was taken under Russian control, and conflict broke out in eastern Ukraine. Armed groups declared independence in parts of the region, leading to years of fighting. Attempts to establish ceasefires slowed the violence at times, but never fully stopped it. As 2021 came to an end, military activity around Ukraine's borders increased significantly. Large numbers of troops were positioned nearby, raising concerns across the international community. Despite official denials, the situation continued to intensify. Then, in early 2022, the invasion began. Many expected a swift outcome, but Ukraine resisted. The initial push toward Kiev was halted, and forces withdrew from the north after facing strong opposition. The conflict shifted into a prolonged and difficult struggle, particularly in the eastern and southern regions of the country. The consequences have been severe. Cities have been damaged, millions of people have been displaced, and countless lives have been affected. The war has also reshaped global politics, influencing alliances, economies, and security strategies around the world. At its core, this conflict is about more than territory. It is about identity, history, and the right of a nation to decide its own future. Ukraine sees itself as an independent state with its own path forward, while Russia views the situation through a different historical and strategic lens. These opposing perspectives have created a situation where compromise is difficult and resolution remains uncertain.